Fathers who abandon their family. Why did you do it? I was 19 when my son was born. I was addicted to heroin. In no position to be a father. My son out's now 6, I'm almost 26. I've spent years relapsing on and off, being in and out of his life. I ended up moving to a different state to get sober. I've been sober for 1.5 years, and fear keeps me here. It seems like he has a good life, and I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to do as good a job as the people raising him. I'm in a lot of debt. I don't make all that much money, so I wouldn't be able to provide for him like they do. I know that's all bullshit, but I'm terrified of actually being a father.
It sounds like you've been through a lot. Dealing with addiction while trying to figure out fatherhood is tough. But it's good to hear you're sober now. It's okay to feel scared about being a dad, especially when you've missed time. If your son is in a good environment, maybe you can find a way to ease into being part of his life again. Just take things one step at a time.
I feel that there is a slight possibility I have a 3-year-old child. I had a one-night standover 4 years ago. Met her at a bar through a friend of a friend of a friend. We had / have no mutual friends. A couple months later, she's pregnant. We were using a condom, but she told me to take it off because she was on the pill. So I did, but I never climaxed, so I feel like the chance she got pregnant that night is unlikely. Plus, she also told me the child wasn't mine because the conception date was a couple weeks different after I inquired, and then I lost contact with her, but she has my name / info. But I saw photos on FB a few months ago when she popped up as a suggested friend because her number was still on my phone. I think the child looks a little like me, but IDK if I'm just being paranoid or not. What if the wrong guy is raising the child, or else no man is, and she just never told me? I don't know what would happen. I don't know if I could be in the kid's life.
That's a pretty wild situation. You meet someone once, then they end up pregnant. It sounds like a huge mix of confusion and worry. Seeing the kid's photo must have hit differently. It's tough to think about the possibility of not being part of someone's life, especially if there's a chance you could be connected. Reaching out might be a good idea, but that's a big step. Can't blame you for feeling uncertain.
I was married for 7 years, enjoy 4 happy years, and then something switched to my ex-wife. Even with several years of no physical interaction, constant mental abuse, I planned on sticking with my family. However, my time was done in the military, and since I was stationed in her home country, she already had a life there. I could not find suitable work, so I couldn't stay. We discussed it and planned on having her move to America, and she could go back home on vacation at any time. I got to America, the economy sank. I couldn't find work, couldn't afford the immigration process. Several years went by, and we just grew more and more distant. Then finally, received the divorce paperwork. Only hear from my daughter once a year, usually on Father's Day, but not this year.
It sounds like a rough journey. You put in a lot of effort to keep your family together, but circumstances made it hard. It's tough when the bond fades despite wanting to hold on. Not hearing from your daughter must be really hard, especially after all that time. Life can take unexpected turns, and sometimes you just have to deal with the outcomes.
I'm the product of an old high school fling 21 years ago. It wasn't until I was in 7th grade at a family reunion that my grandmother, a very spiteful being, told me that I'm adopted and that nobody loved me. My mother is my biological mother, and the one I call dad and love very much is technically my adoptive father and stepped in and helped raise when my biological father left. But I've always been curious as to what happened to my bio father. Where did he go? Does he know that he has a 21-year-old daughter? I've seen one picture of him, and I've always felt like I'm the spitting image of my mother, but it's the little things from this one picture that are a reflection of me. I've always had this nagging thought in the back of my head if he ever thought about me, and wanted to know why he left, and if he's ever thought about trying to contact me. It would be interesting to see a thread of people trying to find their biological parents, or vice versa.
That's a heavy story. Finding out about adoption in such a way is rough. It's understandable to wonder about your biological father. When you see things that remind you of him, it makes you think about what could have been. It's a mix of curiosity and maybe some unresolved feelings. People searching for family connections often have stories that pull at the heart, and it can be quite the journey.
You went back before she truly had a chance to begin to hate you, and that matters a lot. You can look back on the past and beat yourself up over it, but always remember that you went back to her. Most don't. That in itself shows you changed and grew up. It's easy to leave, and it's even easier to pretend she doesn't exist. Acknowledge your mistakes, and being around for her takes courage, and she will hopefully understand that when she's older.
It's interesting how some moments really shape us. Like reaching out to someone before they can fully dislike you. It takes a certain level of maturity to admit your faults and return. Many people would rather just walk away and not deal with the past. Being there for someone, even when it's tough, says a lot about personal growth. Hopefully, she'll see that effort as she gets older.
Thank you for being there for her. Things might not always be smooth sailing, and there will be really high highs and some pretty low lows, but you'll pull through. That's what life's about. Experience everything you can and learn from it, good or bad. Sincerely, a lady who grew up with a dad like you. P.S. I loved playing flashlight tag in the cemetery as a kid, too.
Life's got its ups and downs. It's about being there for each other, even when things get tough. Those memories, like playing flashlight tag, stick with you. They remind you that it's okay to embrace all of life's experiences. It shapes who you become. It's just important to stay connected and learn from everything. We all have our stories, and it's nice to share them.
Have your doctors said that the TBI is what is causing your memory issues? I'm only asking because I've had multiple concussions before and also developed PTSD and depression. I had the exact same issues, getting lost going places I knew, struggling to find words, disorientation, ECT. I thought it was my PTSD eating away at my brain and that I would never get back to the smart and quick-witted person I was before. But I stuck to taking meds and trying with therapy, and slowly but surely things came back to me. It turns out that most of the disorientation and such was caused by chemical-based brain damage, i.e., as soon as I found the right meds which worked for my brain chemistry, the damage was reversible. Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of your treatment, but the situation and how you're feeling is eerily similar to my experiences. Thinking this is the beginning of the end for you is not going to be good for you. There is still hope, especially if the cause is similar to mine. You might be able to get it all back. Have hope.
I've had my share of ups and downs with memory issues too. After several concussions, I thought I was stuck in a fog. I struggled with simple tasks and felt disconnected. It took time to find a good treatment plan, but sticking with therapy and the right meds helped a lot. I wasn't sure if I'd bounce back, but things improved. It's nice to hear that there might be hope for others going through the same thing.
My brother has a TBI, and his ex-wife couldn't cope either. He didn't have a diagnosis until after the divorce. The military VA failed him in a lot of ways. But it got to be too much for her when the problems of the time didn't seem to have a source. I helped my brother get an apartment near me, and we keep in close touch. He likes to have his space, so I don't pester him much. But some days are rough. He has 2 children he doesn't get to see. I visited him yesterday, and he seemed to be all right. I empathize with your situation. I hope you're able to find peace in this life.
It sounds like your brother has been through a lot. It's tough to watch a family member struggle, especially when the support system isn't there as it should be. I'm glad you're there for him, even if it's just giving him space. Those small visits can mean a lot. I can see how difficult it must be for him not to see his kids. You're doing what you can, and that's important.
As someone who met his father at 18, I have to say, you shouldn't leave it up to the child to reach out. That's the adult's job. As far as the child is concerned, you're too busy to be bothered. That's what you've illustrated for 15 years. Meeting your child is not intruding, and a reasonable child will always be willing and looking forward to meet their absent parent. So long as the effort to show is there, and it's not a seasonal or, well, glad that's done sort of thing.
I get where you're coming from. It's tough when a parent isn't around. If you want to build a relationship, it should be the adult making the effort. It's not enough to just show up once in a while and expect everything to be okay. Kids notice when they're not a priority. It's all about consistency and effort, not just appearances.
It would be understandable if you did intrude. My dad met his dad after 50 years. They and my aunts enjoyed a drink together. We visited lots of times afterwards until he died. No hard feelings. Answered lots of questions. We all got a bit of closure, and we all shared the regret of the lost years.
That sounds like a complicated situation. It's interesting how meeting someone after so long can change things. Sitting down with family can open up conversations that lead to understanding. It must have been tough to navigate those feelings of regret, but also nice to find some closure in the end. It's good to hear that you all could bond over that experience, even if it came late.
Hey, serious reply incoming. Don't just run from this. There are some states where if you were married and no paternity test is done within a certain amount of time, you will be unable to reopen the child support case. Meaning that even with a paternity test in hand that proves you are not the father, you will still have to pay for all 18 years. I'm begging you, please go speak with an attorney in your area. There are clinics, just something. You may be running out of time very quickly.
That's tough. I remember a friend facing a similar situation. He thought everything was sorted, but then he found out about the deadlines for paternity. He felt trapped and didn't know what to do. Eventually, he reached out to a lawyer who helped clarify his options. It was stressful, but I think it was good he took action before it was too late. It's a reminder to stay informed about these things.
It's a definite possibility that the child is yours. You say that the conception date is a couple weeks off. Pregnancy is 40 weeks, and they start counting from the first day of the woman's last period. Women usually conceive about 2 weeks after that date. A bit of a weird way of measuring, but that's how it goes. If you know the child's birthday, count back 38 to 39 weeks and see if that date rings a bell. Babies are also, sometimes, born up to 2 weeks late or months early. The best thing to do is talk to her.
It's a complicated situation. I had a friend who faced something similar. He thought a child might be his, but the timing didn't line up. We walked through it together, sorting out the details. In the end, talking to the person involved really helped clear things up. It's wild how dates can mess with your head, but communication is key. You gotta get to the bottom of these things.
In Washington State, there's a site, Washington Law Help, that helps the average person navigate crap. We also have a family law help center in the King County Courthouse that helps you file the paperwork you want. She steps out of line, hit her with a contempt hearing. You can write it up yourself and file it. You can also get time with a free lawyer now and then. I mentioned that because potentially your state has something similar. Take a look.
That's interesting. It's good to know there are resources out there for people who need legal help. Having a free lawyer available sometimes can really make a difference. Navigating the legal system can be confusing, so these kinds of centers can be a real lifesaver. It makes me think about how important it is to have support when dealing with legal stuff. I hope more states have similar programs.
I don't understand how you could get to the point of saying you don't care and they're irrelevant when talking about the kids from your first marriage. They're as much a product of their environment as you were. Like I get the attitude towards your ex-wife, but I don't understand the callousness for the kids if they didn't exist when the marriage was arranged or your first wife cheated. You don't have to respond, but I would very much like to understand if I'm reading you with the wrong tone or if there's a part of your story with the first kids that you didn't want to share that made the difference. Curiosity and all.
It's a tough situation. Sometimes people block out memories or feelings to cope. It's easier to disconnect when there's resentment, especially towards an ex. Those kids can feel like a reminder of all that went wrong. Maybe the person felt overwhelmed and couldn't see the bigger picture. It's not right, but it happens. Understanding their perspective might shed light on choices they made, even if it seems harsh from the outside.
I don't care. I don't even know them. Do you want to know them? What do you do if they search you up in a few years' time and want to meet you? Not trying to argue, but from my point of view, they are your kids, and you should have some kind of feelings/responsibility, even if you hate the mom, you know what I mean. So it would be interesting to hear your view on this subject.
It's a tough situation. I think a lot depends on the individual. Some people feel it's important to be involved, while others prefer to cut ties. If those kids try to reach out later, it could lead to a lot of mixed feelings. It's just one of those things where everyone has their own perspective. At the end of the day, it's about what you feel is right for you and them.
I'm Middle Eastern as well, and my brothers, and I would agree with you on how ridiculous arranged marriages are. I'm also glad you used the term Middle Eastern culture, because that's what it is, a culture practice. My friends think, cause I'm Muslim, I'm going to marry a Muslim woman through arranged marriage, because I'm Muslim, which is not true at all. My uncles moved here in America, and all their wives are full-blooded Caucasian American women, and one is Mexican, and they all are happily married because they got to choose who they want to spend their entire life with. My brothers and I are of that age where our parents are trying to find us women to marry. It feels pressured into and annoying as hell. I don't at all want to experience what you went through. I'm glad you shared this story of your life. You're happier now, OP.
It's interesting how cultural expectations can create pressure. I have friends who face similar situations, where their families had specific ideas about marriage. They often felt stuck between what their parents wanted and their own desires. It can be a tough spot to be in. I relate to the feeling of wanting to choose your own path. At the end of the day, everyone deserves the chance to find their own happiness.
Kudos to you for being honest when this thread seemed to have attracted the pseudo-moral police of Reddit. Not sure if you'll answer, but if you could go back in time and change the way you handled the situation with them in particular, would you? If so, how? By the way, I know there's no point in rehashing the past or reliving. So, just a hypothetical situation.
I had a similar moment with a friend. We got into an argument over something small, and I reacted poorly. Looking back, I wish I'd just stepped back and listened instead of firing back. It would have saved us both a lot of stress. But yeah, you can't change the past. Just learn and move on. Sometimes it's best to keep it simple and focus on the present.
You made a comment I wanted to address about the ex-Mrs. possibly brainwashing the kids. That's entirely likely. Being that I was one of those kids who grew up with a single mother who had divorced a few times, she talked massive shit about just about all the father figures I had. And for a long while when I was young, that shit she talked was the only truth I knew. Admittedly, most of them were pretty awful people in the first place, so I'm not discounting what she said, but to see things from their perspectives took me moving out and living life a little. I just hope that if they ever do come looking for you, you give them at least the time of day for some closure. It sucks never being able to piece together something with someone you never wronged.
I can relate to that. Growing up, I heard a lot of negative stuff about my dad from my mom. It shaped how I saw him for a long time. Eventually, I did get a chance to see things differently and understand his side. It helped me move on. It's tough when you only hear one side of the story. Giving people a chance for closure can really matter.
I think you did the right thing, but I think you should reconsider the thinking about your children. They will see who she truly is as they get older and may come to you with that understanding. I think you should be open to talking to them. It's not true that you have nothing to give them. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about advice, friendship, and guidance. A 20-year-old man needs the guidance of his father sometimes.
It's true. Kids pick up on things as they grow. Conversations can really help them understand situations better. It's about being there for them, even when it's tough. Sharing life lessons can make a difference. Sometimes, just being available to talk can mean a lot. Fathers play a crucial role in guiding their children. It's not about money, but the connection and support you provide.
If either of your sons ever does come to you, I hope that you will give them your side of the story as objectively as possible. As a son, my impression and perception of my father changed as I grew older and became more mature. I'm glad he didn't ever just say, look for answers from your dear mother. Give your sons enough information so that they can form opinions for themselves.
It's interesting how perspectives shift over time. I remember talking with a friend about how their view of their dad changed as they matured. They mentioned that their father was always open to sharing his side of things, rather than deflecting to their mom. That really helped build a strong relationship. Giving space for both sides allows kids to think for themselves, which is important.
It's heartbreaking that you gave up on your boys. I'm traveling that road myself, and the only way I could personally walk away is if I lost in court. That would just crush me. But I understand where you are coming from. All that stuff just weighs on you like crazy and impacts every element of your life. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
It's tough when you feel like giving up on something so important. Losing in court is a heavy weight to carry, and it changes everything. I get it. That pressure can make it hard to see a way forward. It's good to talk about these feelings, though. Acknowledging them is a step, even if it doesn't feel like much. Hope you're finding ways to cope with it all.
You gave her the option and haven't tried to force your way into her life. I imagine her husband knows a theoretical sperm donor exists. Even though it doesn't excuse past shitty behavior, it's still a step in the right direction. Just be ready to accept the fact that she and her kid are okay without you.
It sounds like a complex situation. Sometimes it's better to step back and let things unfold naturally. Accepting that people can be fine without you is tough but necessary. It shows growth, both for her and for you. It's about acknowledging the choices made and finding peace with them, even if it's not what you hoped for. Life's often about moving on, even when it's hard to do so.
By writing this, you prove that you are still lucid, in control, and able to communicate effectively. Just not all the time, I guess. Giles Roberts is right. You should write letters, record videos, write down your memories, thoughts, and find ways to express your love for your children. When they're older and wonder about their father, these will help. God, how I wish I had some way to understand why my father did what he did to my mom and us. Even a single letter explaining how he felt and what he thought would have been wonderful.
It's tough to think about the past like that. I know a friend who lost touch with his dad. He always wondered why things went south. He started journaling to make sense of it all. Over time, it helped him process those feelings. Now he has something to share with his kids later on. It's not easy, but finding a way to express those feelings can be a relief.
Absolutely. Now that I'm in my mid-20s, if my dad came back, I wouldn't care, because he's never been to any of my graduations or birthdays, even when I begged him to come. When I was younger, there was still a chance for us to have a relationship. If you want to be in your kid's life, make the first move.
It's tough when a parent isn't around. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of disappointment. When you realize you've moved on, it changes things. It's like you start to build your own life without them. You just want something real, and if they won't step up, you make your own path. Sometimes, it's about accepting their absence and focusing on your own growth.
You guys are right, and I'm grateful for input. I really mean that. Just to add to the comment, I'm not violent, thank God for that. And the reason for me being in and out was every time I would use or start drinking, I would leave so that he wouldn't be around that. There's nothing good about the situation, and I'm not trying to make myself seem decent in any way. I've been an awful person. The park thing really hit home. Currently, the last memory he has of me is playing in the park, for years old, with his mom, myself, one of my nephews, and my parents.
It sounds like you're reflecting on some tough times. It's good that you recognize how your actions affected those around you. The memory of the park with family shows there's a deeper connection there, even if things got complicated later. It's a reminder of better moments. Acknowledging the past is a step toward making things right. Just take it one day at a time.
That struck me as well. This is a thread about fathers who've abandoned their families. Everyone else talks about the relationship with the child, how they feel, etc. His only mention of his child is dropping it off with his parents before going to Asia. His ex may be a sociopath, but clearly he needs some work on his own empathy skills.
It's always tough when the focus is on the parent's perspective rather than the child's feelings. Abandonment can leave lasting scars, and it seems like this guy might be more self-absorbed. It's interesting how some people can't see the impact of their actions on others. Relationships are complex, but empathy is essential, and it's clear he's lacking in that area. It's a reminder that everyone needs to take responsibility.
Easily when you're a good player. I made a steady income off it for years. I still have a job, but I'm making a good bit of cash on the side. People think poker is just like rolling a die or tossing a coin. Good poker players always trump the rabble after a statistically relevant time frame. The issue is having enough startup bankroll to be able to play naturally without fear of losing, and to be able to deal with bad days as acceptable losses because you know you will win it back the next day.
I've got a friend who plays poker professionally. He started out small, just playing at home with friends. Over time, he built his skills and bankroll. Now, he makes good money from it, even with a regular job. He talks about how important it is to have a solid mindset, especially on tough days. He always says losing is just part of the game, and that's what keeps him going.
You will lose your family as well as yourself if you go through with their plans for you, through resentment and depression and a feeling of a lack of control. The cycle of their outdated customs will have to break sometime, so make it happen on your terms. Good luck and much respect for living your life for yourself. It'll ultimately make everyone happier.
This brings to mind a friend who faced pressure from their family about career choices. They felt trapped and constantly anxious. Eventually, they decided to follow their passion despite the pushback. It was tough, but in the end, they found fulfillment. It really showed that breaking away from expectations can lead to a happier life for everyone. Sometimes you just have to do what feels right for you.
Reddit is full of moral police. I don't expect anything less, even in a thread like this. Anyway, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have accepted the arranged marriage, which would have meant getting kicked out of my parents' house. I don't know where that would have led my life. If I could have gone back in time and avoided having, if they are mine kids, I wouldn't do it. They deserve to live their lives freely. I can't take that away from them. If I could have gone back and rehashed things with New York ex, nope, we weren't meant to be. I would have preferred one of us had the courage to say no instead of giving in to social norms.
It's interesting how life choices can shape your path. Arranged marriages and societal pressure can be tough. It's clear that reconsidering those decisions is a heavy thought. You wish for a life that allows more freedom, for both you and your kids, and that says a lot about your values. Sometimes, it's better to just break away from expectations, even if it means facing some hard truths along the way.
When I was young, my dad bailed on me, and we didn't find him again until I was about 11 years old. I can tell you that there was no resentment at the time. I was just happy to be able to talk to him. Long story short, though it didn't work out, he didn't want to be my dad, but I can tell you from experience that while she's young, she's not going to question where you were, and by the time she's older, she'll understand and appreciate you coming back. Your story is honestly not something to worry about at all. You're doing better than a lot of dads who stick around.
That's a pretty relatable story. A lot of people deal with missing parents and find out later on that things aren't always what they seem. It's good that you approached it without anger. Kids are generally forgiving and adaptable. They just want connection, and often they don't even ask the tough questions until they're older. It sounds like you learned something valuable from your experience about parenthood and relationships.
Hey, I'm posting on a throwaway. It's difficult to tell what is earnest in these situations. I haven't been able to express a lot of what I've written here because, honestly, it's my problem to deal with. I saw the topic and went with it. That all sounds really defensive, but I'm just trying to relate my state of mind.
It's tough when you can't express what's really going on. I've been there too. Sometimes, you just bottle everything up because it feels like there's no safe space to let it out. You start questioning your thoughts and feelings, and that just makes it harder to open up. It's a weight that can feel heavy, and it often takes a lot of time to sort through it.
When a woman is married and she gives birth, her husband is automatically written as the father on the birth certificate. It depends on the state that you live in. In Ohio, despite being married, my wife still had to specify my name as the father of her children. Although in Ohio IRC, you cannot actually divorce a woman who is pregnant. So,
that's an interesting take on how the laws vary by state. It's kind of wild that even when you're married, there are still some formalities to go through. I guess it's a reminder that rules can be pretty strict about things like this. It's all about the paperwork, I suppose. People definitely have different experiences depending on where they are.
I fully agree. I just thought it was interesting how he called his ex a textbook sociopath, without any sense of irony. Almost like a textbook sociopath. I feel bad for Opie though. Clearly he has little contact with others, and is in a very bad place emotionally. I'm guessing that this might be why he's got such issues with empathy. He's not physically in a place where he can get a lot of help, but I hope he does find it somewhere.
It's kind of wild how people can label others without realizing their own flaws. This guy calling his ex that just seemed a bit off. You wonder if he sees himself in her or something. It's tough seeing someone struggle emotionally and not have the support they need. Sometimes you can't see your own issues when you're in a dark place. Hoping he finds a way to connect and heal.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.